Ladies and gentlemen, tonight I have an amazing show with somebody who's extremely experienced when it comes to Canada-US relations and how the trade relationship between the two parties might shape up. Jamie Tronnes is the executive director of the Center for North American Prosperity and Security. She's got experience in over 20 countries, and she's led global democracy and development programs, and now she writes on trade, defense, and US-Canada relations. Her insights help shape policy conversations across North America. Jamie, what's it like down in DC right now with all these trade conversations happening? Are people going crazy, or is this like calm, cool, collective, you're getting your poutine somehow?
Well, DC is anything but calm, cool, and collected right now, especially in the middle of the summer. It's very hot, and I think people are kind of ready for a break. But unfortunately, we're not getting one. We'll see what happens on August 1st in terms of tariff trade and other talks. But right now, things are very, very intense.
Well, Jamie, we saw the premiers and Prime Minister Mark Carney meet up in Muskoka, actually, about 4 hours from where I am. I'm curious to know, what did they discuss? What is the average person going to care about with regards to what they discussed? Or was it kind of just political?
I mean, I don't think it was all that political. I think right now the premiers are still very much focused on existential threats to the country, and that has to do with prosperity and trade. There was a reason why they gathered there to kind of present what they hope to be a good bargain, to get an update from the prime minister, and to hear more about strategizing and collectively coming together to see if there's something that can be done on a national level to start making Canada a little bit more of a powerhouse economically and get things moving in terms of national projects.
So infrastructure stability is something we spoke of for quite some time. And now it seems like it's starting to actually hit the tables. Deals are trying to be signed behind that. I am curious, though, is that the common consensus? Is everybody in the government on board with that as it relates to premiers and the prime minister? I mean, even when we talk about mayors, we saw, one mayor in particular from Vaughan went out to Europe to build relationships. So we're kind of seeing people go all over the place. Is this a well-formed response? Are we going to see that from Canada, or do you think there's something different here?
I mean, I think that just because the way that we managed slightly rudderless at the beginning of this crisis and starting in January, and then when Trudeau resigned, and then followed by the leadership vacuum, the premiers really had stepped in early to fill that leadership void. And it opened up the floodgates for others at different levels of government to try their hand at making deals and making, different connections across countries and also across Canada. And I think that we're seeing that momentum wants to continue. If you're a mayor and you're dealing with people who really are worried about their businesses, you're going to do whatever you can to try and help those businesses to succeed.
We have about a minute and a half here, and I'm curious just to get into a little bit of the detail behind how you feel the trade conversation is progressing. Before we get into the specifics, how is it progressing between Canada and the United States? Give us the latest and greatest.
Yeah, I mean, I met with Ambassador Hillman yesterday, and she's not giving anything away, but I have a feeling that even if she had told me an update, it would have been made redundant just a few minutes later because things are moving so fast and changing minute by minute down here. Canada is furiously working behind the scenes to try and get something done. I know that the United States, we're not their only country that they're dealing with right now in terms of making deals and trying to get something done and carved out before Friday's deadline. But Canada is working very hard. They have a good team. They are probably exhausted, and I don't blame them. But it is something that I believe the whole of government approach is really coming together to try and help on the Canadian side. On the American side, I think there's a little bit of disjointed equilibrium in that, it's not always clear that the left hand and right hand know what each other are doing.
Right.
When you have Jameson Greer, who is the USTR negotiating, but then you also have potentially Howard Lutnick and Scott Bessent, and then Trump himself, it can make things very confusing to know who you should be talking to.
Jamie, just really quick, where do we sit on the priority list? Are we high or not?
I think Canada is very high, yes.
Okay. All right. With that, we'll be right back. Stay tuned for more.
I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. I'ma rule the world, yeah.
So, Jamie, we just finished discussing the priority list that Canada sits on as it relates to U.S. trade. I mean, we just saw EU sign a massive deal. They're calling it on both sides the biggest trade deal ever signed. I'm not sure what statistics back that up, but it is a pretty big deal. As well, we've seen deals signed with Japan and a couple of other countries. When we hear that, what does that mean for Canada? Why, as a Canadian, should I care about those?
Yeah, we should care about them because it gives us insight into what kind of deal we might hope to get. And I think it's important to also see that Mark Carney has noticed that as well and commented that no other country, no matter how generous it has been in terms with the United States, has been able to get a tariff-free deal. And that should be somewhat worrying to Canadians. Our trade with the United States is very close to the size of the EU. There's very different trade deficit situation involved there, but in terms of leverage, countries that have perhaps slightly more leverage than Canada does are not getting the kind of deal that Canada's hoping to get, and that is very worrisome. However, the other kind of caveat to that is that we're not really seeing the fine details of all these agreements. There's no papers coming out. There's no nitty-gritty details that you normally see when you're negotiating a major trade agreement. It's sort of like an agreement to agree to do these things. And so the devil may really be in the details. We really just don't know
So that's
quite
what
what
I'm
it is that we're
curious. I am curious because I had that written on my notes to discuss with you was we didn't really see specifics. And I mean, the EU can't control each individual country and what kind of deals they strike with, the United States, or at least the type of business they do. But do you think that this will, in some capacity influence the leverage that the United States has on Canada? Because it was pretty high before, but now because they signed these two deals, it seems like it's even higher.
Potentially, but I think that there's a lot of blueprints to see how other countries have negotiated, and there's room for Canadians and the Canadian delegation to say our trade deficit is different. We should be given different considerations. We are an ally. We are a geographical ally. And furthermore, we've done a lot more to help America to do things like combating China and to secure the continent. The problem is some of those things may have come too late to the table because we had several decade of lost years under Trudeau where we weren't doing the things that America asked us to do. So they are also looking at Canada and saying, but you haven't been a trusted ally. You haven't lived up to your military commitments on spending. We've had to take you to court on the digital services tax. And then finally, at the 11th hour, you got rid of it. We have these grievances with you, and why aren't you listening to us? Those are things that have been going on for the past decade here in the United States as they look north to Canadians and think, I don't know, can we make a deal with Canada? Are things truly different? It's still the same party. It's a different leader.
Now, I know,
And I think
Jamie, just a quick jump in on that front,
Sure.
according to the Globe and Mail, they reported 73% of Canadians support a national pipeline or pipelines of any kind. We're seeing the tide kind of turn, it seems, in Canada. However, I also saw on a news outlet, I see, oh, well, better not to sign a deal than to sign a bad one. Do we have that power to even say that? Because Canada seems to think that they have a lot of leverage, and I'm just curious to know, do we? Like, do we have a lot of leverage to be able to say those types of things? We got about a minute and a half here.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of leverage. There are ways we can get some more leverage into the negotiation, but the reality is that we don't have all that much leverage in terms of what the United States gets from us. Our counter tariffs are barely noticed by them, and reality is Canadians pay those counter tariffs. Tariffs hurt everyone, and it's not the people who are exporting who pay it. So there's some things for Canada to consider on that. A bad deal instead of any deal is perhaps not something that's within our power. However, at the moment, we do have a trade deal with the United States, and we need to understand quite how they're going to incorporate that and whether or not we can actually save the CUSMA deal going into 2026. If we can keep going with our current exemptions under the tariffs through the CUSMA deal, that's the best case scenario for Canada. But certainly we're not going to be able to carve out a lot of tariff-free exemptions because one thing is true. Trump wants tariffs. And at the end of the day, he's going to try and get them as best he can.
I know that we saw even on the EU side a 15% tariff. Is that of major effect? You only got about 10 seconds here, but if Canada had that, would that significantly hurt them?
That would significantly hurt Canada. It would be catastrophic.
Interesting. Wow. Well, look, we'll get into it. I know you published a paper along with some other colleagues of yours called The Great Bargain, Prosperity for Future for Canada and the United States. Let's get into it in the next segment. Stay tuned.
I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah.
So, Jamie, I teased the Great Bargain paper that your institute wrote up. You were part of this. I remember when I saw you a little while ago, just a couple of weeks ago, you were saying it was so difficult to get this paper out because things just constantly kept changing. Why did you decide to release it on, I believe it was July 10th? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, we decided to get it out, as soon as we could. But as you mentioned, there were so many things that we'd be about ready to print, and then there'd be a tweet or an agreement or something else would change on defense spending or the DST or other things. And so, at some point, you just have to push the baby out into the world and
Yeah.
hope that, that
So
it's okay.
talk to me a little bit about what the Great Bargain discusses. I've covered this on my show just to give audience a little bit of an understanding here. I've covered this on my show, but what the Great Bargain paper really puts into perspective is the reasons why. And I found you guys really fought for the reasons why or just laid it out point blank for us. So what's covered in the Great Bargain paper that we need to be at for discussion in this next segment?
Yeah, so basically, the paper came about through the former Conservative Trade Minister Ed Fast came to us with this idea for how Canada can get more cards at the table. And one of the big ways to do that is to make the deal more comprehensive, more wide-ranging, and factoring other things. So tying our free trade, for example, to national defense makes it much harder for a deal to be broken by either a current sitting prime minister, a future prime minister, a future president, or the current sitting president, because they'd really be going against a comprehensive deal that encompasses a lot of interests on both sides. It allows Canada to bring some of those other cards to the table that America has been asking Canada to deal with for some time.
What are these
But it,
cards, Jamie? What are these
for,
cards?
yeah, so for example, things like supply management. Canada has restricted some access to dairy in Canada, and America is very hung up on that and would like to be able to access more of the dairy market in Canada. I also believe that would be good for the dairy market in Canada, but there's other things too that America really wants, like critical minerals. Having more agreement on how we're going to do critical minerals. Things like building railways across the border. Those are all things, grand infrastructure projects that President Trump really wants to get done. And Canada can help with those things.
It sounds like he just wants to see us want a more North American-wide partnership. Do you feel because we're a cross-border nation that we have that leverage to hold? And how much of a percentage, I guess, if you could give me any, does that give us in comparison to like the EU or, Japan of some kind as a major automotive maker? But what kind of leverage does that give us in the conversation? Is it significant?
It is significant. I mean, we account for a lot of American imports, and our trade deficit with the United States that Trump likes to talk about is actually very different than every other country, and that's one of the things we talk about in the Grand Bargain Project. Basically, our 66% of the things that we sell to America, America actually turns into other products and then sells them for profit. So oil is a perfect example. For every dollar of oil we sell them, something like $3 in profit is made to American companies who are then selling it on. And so, we think about all the other things that we put into investment, whether it's aluminum, whether it's other things that they're going to need to want to build this manufacturing that exists here in the U.S. or to expand railways, things like that. All of those things come from Canada. A lot of those things come from Canada.
Now,
And
Jamie,
it's also
can I just quick jump in? So we heard the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, come out. We want to be an infrastructure superpower. Love to hear that because it sounds like it's very similar to your paper as well. Infrastructure superpower. In saying that, though, it's going to take a lot of years, even just we were having another conversation about LNG. LNG infrastructure projects take an average of 3 to 4 years to get to production levels. Railway as well would be another major one, some form of transportation, another pipeline, maybe it's cross-border. These kinds of things take time. Does Trump care about that? And will that influence the timing of the tariffs? Will he say, you know what, you guys can't even do it for 2 years, so I'm going to place the tariffs on you, and then in midterms we can rediscuss? Are we going to see that happen? You got about 30 seconds here.
I think Trump wants deals. Deals that put shovels in the ground are the best kinds of deals that he wants. And the faster that we can get a deal that puts shovels in the ground is something that he's interested in, especially if it comes to building something like a pipeline or other energy. And the main reason I would say that is that the energy demand here in the United States has skyrocketed. AI servers are coming online, and they are taking away from the local grids. There's just under 200 natural gas-fired electrical plants under construction in the United States right now, but the pipelines are already almost at capacity.
Jamie, I just got to cut you off. This is we'll get into it in the next segment because this is fantastic. We'll be in touch. To close off our discussion with Jamie, we've got about 5 minutes here. And Jamie, I really want to speak with you about what news Canadians can look out for. It's Wednesday today, just before August 1st. The deadline's hitting. Friday is going to be a big day. I'm curious to know, what kind of news can we look out for with this regard?
Yeah, I mean, it changes day to day, but tomorrow is a big day that people should start watching. There's going to be court hearings on whether or not Trump has the power to invoke the IEEPA tariffs, the tariffs that are based on the emergency powers that he has. And that is going to be a trial to watch, because it also means that whatever happens on August 1st, not just for Canada, but for a lot of other countries, may not be permanent. All that said, whatever does happen on August 1st, on Friday, whether or not we actually get hit with the tariff letters or other countries get hit with the tariff letters that Trump has sent out, that also may not be permanent. People are also watching to see if he's going to taco, as has been mentioned, and actually go through with the tariffs. The secretaries have said, yes, this is happening, get ready. And certainly August 1st seems like a good time to drop tariffs on businesses at a kind of time when people aren't paying as much attention as they normally would.
It's funny you say that. Anyways, but I am curious to know, when you speak of August 1st, what's so important for us to keep in mind on August 1st? You said something that was really crucial, was it may not be permanent. What will influence Trump saying, okay, I want it to be this day, we're going to place the tariffs, it's going to be a 20% tariff, it's going to be a 15% tariff, or, okay, guys, I'll give you another 60 days. Do you think Canada can get that? Because it doesn't sound like we're near close, unless our politicians are maybe keeping it behind for right now, behind the curtain, and then they're going to come out on Friday with a big announcement. Is that what you're projecting?
I'm not entirely projecting that, but I am very certain that right now, what they're trying to do is protect CUSMA and protect our exemptions that would come under that. The 35% tariff letter that Trump had sent to Carney was carefully later talked about by both administration officials, saying that it exempts CUSMA compliant products, which is a really big deal. But CUSMA is up for renewal and review in 2026. That can come very early, and people are actually concerned whether or not there's going to be a review, which would be just reviewing it, a renegotiation, which could be potentially much more catastrophic, or a scrapping of it altogether, which means that we're looking at negotiating an entirely new agreement. And so Canada's situation is different than the other countries, as is Mexico's, because we have that existing agreement right now. And thus far, the U.S. government has said they're going to honor that, but that other goods will be tariffed. So Canada is still going to have a fight on its hands. It's not going to end with whatever happens on Friday. There's still going to be a lot of negotiation going on.
Do you see Trump seeing what he can get out of us before CUSMA is renegotiated in 2026? I'm not sure the month that it's being renegotiated, but are we seeing that part of the discussion? And could we see that part of the discussion where Canada just realizes we can't hold to this anymore, he's not going to allow this, so we need to come up with a whole new agreement?
I mean, certainly there's a million scenarios that could happen, but if the US backs out of the USMCA entirely, or CUSMA as we call it in Canada, then yes, we will be in a scenario where we're having a whole new agreement. And it may not be a tripartite agreement, it may be a bilateral agreement. So there's a lot of scenarios. I think that the trade teams on both sides of the border are planning for those scenarios right now. At least I should hope that they are. And I actually know which of those scenarios keeps me up at night, and that's the scenario where we lose CUSMA.
So for every Canadian watching, we have about 45 seconds here. Jamie, I'm curious to know from you, what would you say to the Canadians watching who are anticipating this, businesses impacted significantly by these tariffs? What kind of piece of advice would you give to them? Even just saying, guys, watch out. Don't freak out about one announcement because it could change next week.
Yeah, I know that investors like certainty, and I know that this is the most uncertain time for investment, and that is not a good recipe for continuing on. I really would be remiss if I tried to give you any advice that would save your business, because I just can't think of anything at the moment. But I would say that I know that the country is pulling for each of our small businesses, particularly, and that people really are doing the right thing and trying to buy Canadian.
Well, Jamie, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And hey, enjoy DC, and we'll be in touch for future discussions like this.
Thank you.
What a great discussion with Jamie. And of course, I'll end off with this. Do not simply accept what you are told. Challenge your thinking, engage in differences, and listen to new perspectives. Thank you. And hey, challenge me if you disagreed on anything. Have a great night.
나만의 세상 만들어 장악. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah, yeah. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. 해가 지고 뜰 때까지 I'm up, yeah.